The glass shattered against the wall, missing Elara's head by inches. "You will cooperate," Kael said from his throne, voice cold as winter steel. "Or would you prefer I send a formal invitation to your father instead? 3 days." She'd been back in the palace for 3 days, and already Kael was showing her exactly what kind of king he'd become. The kind who threw objects when displeased. The kind who smiled while threatening her life. Elara stood in the center of his war room, hands clenched into fists, trying not to shake. Around them, maps covered every surface. Red marks indicated her father's territories. Black marks showed targets already destroyed. "I told you," she said through gritted teeth. "I don't know my father's security protocols. I've been gone for 2 years. You know his patterns, his habits, his weaknesses." Kael descended from the throne with predatory grace. He'd changed so much from the dying prince she'd known. Everything about him now screamed power and danger. "You lived with him for 22 years. Don't pretend you're useless to me." "Not pretending anything. I'm telling you the truth." He stopped inches from her face, close enough that she could smell sandalwood and something darker. "Then let me make the truth simpler for you. Your father ordered my poisoning. Did you know that?" Elara's breath caught. "What?" "Your father, Duke Adnigi. He paid my cousin to poison me slowly over 12 months. Wanted to weaken the Valerius Empire so the Thorn Alliance could expand east." Kael's smile was razor-sharp. "Surprised, or did you know all along?" "I didn't. I had no idea." "Convenient." He turned away, dismissing her shock. "Your father is a butcher who kills anyone in his path, including his own allies, including me, and you expect me to believe you knew nothing?" "I witnessed him murder 3 council members. That's why I ran." The words exploded from her before she could stop them. "Why would I run if I was working with him?" Kael paused, turned back slowly. "Tell me." "Me what you saw, Elara, every detail, or I'll assume you're protecting him." Her throat burned. She'd kept this secret for 2 years, locked it away so deep she sometimes convinced herself it hadn't happened. But Kael was staring at her with those intense dark eyes, and she was so tired of carrying it alone. "It was a trade negotiation," she whispered. 3 council members from the eastern provinces came to discuss territory disputes. My father invited them to dinner. I was supposed to be in bed, but I came down for a book." Her voice shook. "I heard screaming, went to the dining hall. He'd slit their throats, all 3, while they were eating, blood everywhere. And he just stood there, wiping his knife on a napkin like it was nothing." Kael's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "He saw you." Looked right at me, said, "Go back to bed, Serafina. This is none of your concern." But the next morning, his men started following me. I knew he couldn't let me live with that knowledge." She wrapped hair arms around herself. "So I ran." Silence filled the war room, heavy, suffocating. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Kael asked quietly. "Who would believe a duke's daughter over a duke? Who would protect me?" She laughed bitterly. "I tried to go to the authorities. They sent me back home, said I was hysterical, imagining things. My father owns half the magistrates in the Thorn Alliance." Kael moved closer again. This time his hand came up to her face, tilting her chin so she had to meet his eyes. "I believe you," he said, 2 words. That's all it took for something inside her to crack. 2 years of running and hiding and being called a liar, and this man, this dangerous, vengeful king, believed her without question. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I see it in your eyes, the same thing I see when I look in the mirror. Betrayal by someone who was supposed to protect you." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "We're both survivors of men who should have loved us. Your father, my cousin, and now we're going to make them pay." "I can't." "Yes, you can, you will." He released her and turned back to the maps. "Your father is hosting a summit in 3 weeks. All the major houses of the Thorn Alliance will be there. It's the perfect opportunity." Opportunity for what? To destroy him publicly, to expose his crimes, to dismantle everything he's built. Kael's finger traced a route in the map. "And you're going to help me do it." "Kill me. He'll try, but he'll have to go through me first." Kael looked at her over his shoulder. "And I promise you, Elara, no one gets to hurt you except me." Possessive way he said it should have terrified her. Instead, it sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. Over the next week, Kael taught her about revenge. Not just the planning and strategy, though there was plenty of that. He taught her about patience, about watching and waiting, about finding someone's weakness and pressing until they broke. He was a ruthless teacher. Every morning, he summoned her to the war room. Every morning, they went over her father's networks, his allies, his secrets. And every morning, Kael pushed her harder. "Again," he commanded. "Tell me about Lord Okonkwo." Elara closed her eyes, pulling the memory forward. "He's my father's closest advisor. They've known each other since childhood. He has a gambling problem he thinks nobody knows about." Much debt? I don't know exact numbers, but I heard my father mention it once. Said Okonkwo owed money to some dangerous people. Kael made a note. We can use that, what else? He has a daughter, Kioma. She's 16. My father arranged her marriage to a 60-year-old merchant. Kael's pen paused. Against her will. Against everyone's will except my father's and the merchant's. Okonkwo tried to refuse, but my father threatened to expose his debts, so he agreed. Interesting. Kael leaned back in his chair, studying her. You remember all of this after 2 years. Some things you don't forget. Like what? She met his gaze steadily. Like the faces of people who are trapped. Kioma looked at me the day the engagement was announced. She looked like I felt, desperate, searching for someone to help. But I couldn't help her. I could barely help myself. Something shifted in Kael's expression. If we destroy your father, we free her too, and everyone else he's controlling. Is that what this is really about? Freedom? No, his honesty was brutal. It's about revenge, but sometimes revenge has good side effects. That afternoon, Kael took her to the palace training grounds. Elara had expected more strategy sessions. Instead, he handed her a knife. What is this? She asked. Defense training. You said your father's men almost caught you multiple times. That stops now. I don't know how to fight. I know, that's why I'm teaching you. He moved behind her, adjusting her grip on the knife. His chest pressed against her back, his hands covering hers. Hold it like this, firm but not rigid. If someone grabs you, you go for the soft targets, throat, eyes, groin. His breath was warm against her ear. Elara tried to focus on the lesson and not on the way her body responded to his nearness. Why does it matter if I can defend myself? You have guards everywhere. Because I won't always be there. His voice dropped lower. And I need to know you can survive without me. Do you care if I survive? Because you're mine. He spun her around suddenly, the knife still in her hand now pressed between them. And I protect what's mine. They were inches apart. His dark eyes burned into hers. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain he could hear it. I'm not yours, she whispered, but it sounded like a lie even to her own ears. Aren't you? His hand came up to her braid, wrapping it around his fingers like he had that first night. You're ruining my name, living in my palace, helping me plan my revenge. What part of you isn't mine? My choice. I didn't choose any of this. Didn't you? He leaned closer. You could have refused, could have let me hand you over to your father, but you are still here. Why? Because you're the only person who's ever made me feel seen, she thought. Because when you look at me, I feel like I matter. Because I'm terrified of how much I wanted you to come back for me, but she couldn't say any of that. So instead, she said, because you gave me no choice. Liar. But he smiled when he said it, the same way he had when he was dying. You keep lying to both of us and one day you'll start believing it. He released her and stepped back. Again, show me what you'd do if someone grabbed you from behind. They trained for hours. By the end, Elara's arms ached and sweat soaked through her dress. But she'd learned how to break a hold, how to strike, how to run when running was the only option. Better, Kael said, watching her. But you're still hesitating. When someone attacks you, you don't think. You're ached. Try again. I'm exhausted. So will you be when your father's men find you again. That sparked her anger. She turned on him, knife gripped properly now, and lunged, not to hurt him, just top-roof she could. Kael caught her wrist easily, twisted, and suddenly she was on her back with him above her, her knife in his hand. Good, he breathed. That anger, use it. He was so close. His body pressed against hers, pinning her to the ground. His free hand braced beside her head, those intense dark eyes staring down at her like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. Get off me, she said, but her voice came out breathy instead of angry. Make me. She tried to remember the moves he'd taught her, tried to focus, but all she could think about was the way he'd held her hand when he was dying, the way he'd whispered her name like a prayer, the way he looked at her now like he wanted to consume her. I can't, she admitted. Yes, you can. You're just afraid of what happens if you try. I'm not afraid of you. I know. His thumb traced her lower lip. You're afraid of yourself, of what you feel when I touch you. Don't feel anything. Liar. He lowered his head until his lips were a breath from hers. You feel everything, I can see it. The way your pupils dilate, the way your breathing changes, the way you lean toward me even when you're telling yourself not to. Kael. Tell me to stop. She should tell him to let her go, should push him away. Should remember that he dragged her here against her will and was using her for revenge. But instead, she whispered, what if I don't want you to? His control shattered. He kissed her like a man starving, like she was air and he'd been drowning. His hand tangled in her braids, pulling her closer. The knife clattered to the ground, forgotten. Elara kissed him back with equal desperation. 2 years of running. 2 weeks of caring for a dying man, 3 months of grieving someone she barely knew. It all poured into this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "This is a mistake," he said. "I know. We're going to hurt each other. I know. I can't stop. I know." She pulled him back down. "Neither can I." They stayed on that training ground until sunset, crossing and recrossing the line between enemies and something else. Something more dangerous than either of them was ready to admit. That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the connecting door between her room and Kael's, remembering every touch, every kiss, every breathless moment. A soft knock came from that door. Her heart leapt. "Come in." Kael entered wearing only black sleeping pants, his chest bare. In the candlelight, she could see the faint scars in his torso, remnants of his poisoning, evidence of his survival. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No." "Neither can I." He crossed to her bed and sat on the edge. "I keep thinking about this afternoon." "Me too. Can't happen again." "Not." "Because I need you focused, clear-headed, able to help me destroy your father." His hand found hers in the darkness. "Not distracted by whatever this is between us." "Then why are you here?" "Because I'm a hypocrite." He brought her hand to his lips. "Because I spent 3 months recovering and all I could think about was your voice, the way you sang to me, the way you cried when you thought I couldn't see, and now you're here, real and alive, and I can't stay away." Elara sat up, the silk sheets falling away. "When you were dying, you said I made you feel human. But Kael, you made me feel human too. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't just running, I was someone's companion, someone's wife," he finished. "You were my wife. I still am, legally." His hand cupped her face. "And I intend to make that mean something. Even though I was just a transaction. You stopped being a transaction the first night you stayed up with me through the pain. You stopped being a transaction when you sang in Yoruba and thought I couldn't hear. You stopped being a transaction when you cried at my bedside." He pulled her closer. "You became mine long before I ever became yours. That's not love, Kael, that's obsession. I know, but it's all I have to give you. Obsession and revenge and a crown that weighs more than either of us. Is that enough?" She should say no, should tell him she wanted more, deserved more, but instead she kissed him, and that was answer enough. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of strategy and stolen moments. During the day, they planned her father's destruction. At night, they fell into each other like drowning people reaching for shore. Kael showed her every side of himself. The ruthless king who executed traitors without hesitation. The brilliant strategist who saw 3 moves ahead. The broken boy who'd survived poison and betrayal. And sometimes, in the darkest hours before dawn, the dying prince who'd held her hand and believed she cared. "Tell me about your mother," she said one night, lying beside him. "You know everything about me. I want to know you." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "She died when I was 8. Fever took her in 3 days. My father never recovered. He became cold, distant, turned all his attention to my cousin who was charming and healthy and everything I wasn't." Kael's hand found hers in the darkness. "When I started getting sick, part of me wondered if it was fate, if I was meant to follow my mother. But then you came, and you made him want to survive." "Kael, I'm not saying this for pity. I'm saying it so you understand. You saved my life, not the physicians, not the antidote. You, because you gave me a reason to fight." He turned to face her. "And now I'm fighting for you, for us, for the future your father tried to take from both of us. What if we fail? We won't. What if we do? Then we die together." He said it simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I survived death once. I'm not afraid of it anymore, but I am afraid of losing you." Summit arrived faster than Elara was ready for. Kael had secured them an invitation under false pretenses. They would attend as representatives from a neutral kingdom, interested in trade negotiations. Her father wouldn't recognize her immediately, not with her hair styled differently and wearing the formal robes of Valerius nobility. The plan was simple. Get in, gather evidence, expose her father's crimes in front of every major house, destroy his credibility and his alliances in one move. Simple but not easy. "Are you ready?" Kael asked as their carriage approached her father's estate. Elara stared out the window at the place she'd grown up, the gardens where she'd played as a child, the library where she'd spent hours reading, the dining hall where she'd witnessed murder. "No," she admitted. "But let's do it anyway." Kael took her hand. "If anything goes wrong, I know, run, hide, survive." His grip tightened. "Fight! You're not that girl anymore. You're my queen, and queens don't run." The words settled into her like armor. They entered the estate with guards flanking them. The summit was already in full swing. Dozens of nobles from across the Thorn Alliance filled the great hall. And there, at the head table, sat her father. Duke Adnigi hadn't changed. Still tall and commanding. Still wearing that same cold smile. Still radiating power and danger. But for the first time in her life, Elara wasn't afraid of him because beside her stood a man who'd survived poison and death. A king who commanded armies. Someone who looked at her like she was worth burning the world for. Lord Valerius, the announcer called. And Lady Valerius. They walked forward. Every eye in the room turned to them. Her father's gaze swept past them initially. Then snapped back. His eyes widened, just for a second, then narrowed with recognition and rage. Seraphina, he breathed. The room went silent. That's not my name anymore, Elara said clearly. I'm Elara Valerius, wife of King Kael Jinwu Valerius, and I'm here to tell everyone exactly what kind of man you are. Her father stood slowly. You dare come to my home. Your home. Kael's voice cut through the room like a blade. The same home where you murdered 3 council members in cold blood. Where you've been plotting assassinations and poisonings. Where you've held your entire alliance hostage through fear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. These are lies, her father said smoothly. My daughter has been mentally unstable for years, that's why she's ran away. I've been searching for her, trying to get her help. I saw you, Elara interrupted. 2 years ago, in the dining hall. Council members from the eastern provinces, you killed them because they refused to give you their territory. And when I witnessed it, you tried to have me killed too. Ridiculous, where's your proof? Here. Kael pulled documents from his coat. Signed testimonies from your guards, payment records for thesisins you sent after your own daughter, and communications between you and my cousin arranging my poisoning. He threw the papers onto the table. They scattered across the food and wine, undeniable and damning. You tried to kill a prince of the Valerius Empire, Kael continued. An act of war. And you've been systematically murdering anyone who stood in your path to power. Nobles erupted. Shouts, accusations, demands for answers. Her father's face went from shock to rage. You little! He lunged across the table toward Elara, knife in hand, but Elara was ready. Everything Kael had taught her, every lesson, every moment of training she sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, twisted, the knife clattered to the floor, and suddenly the great Duke Adnigi was on his knees before his daughter, arm bent at an angle that made him gasp in pain. The room fell absolutely silent. You taught me to be afraid, Elara said quietly. Someone else taught me to fight back, and I choose to fight. She released him and stepped back. Kael's guards moved forward immediately, restraining her father before he could rise. Duke Adnigi, Kael announced. You are under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and attempted assassination of a foreign monarch. You will be extradited to Valerius to stand trial. You can't do this. The Alliance won't allow. The Alliance, said Lord Okonkwo, standing slowly, has had enough of your tyranny. He looked at Elara. I'm sorry for not helping you, for not believing you, for sacrificing my own daughter to keep you quiet. Other nobles stood, one by one, until nearly the entire room was on their feet. We support King Valerius's claim, Okonkwo continued. And we apologize to Lady Elara for failing her. Her father stared around in disbelief. You're all traitors. No, Kael said coldly. We're survivors, just like your daughter. The difference is we learned who the real enemy was. They took her father away in chains. Elara watched, feeling nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, just emptiness where fear used to live. Kael's hand found hers. Are you all right? I don't know. I thought I'd feel different. Victorious or something, but I just feel empty, I know. He pulled her close. Revenge doesn't fill the holes they left, but at least now you can start healing without looking over your shoulder. The summit continued late into the night. Nobles approached Elara one by one, apologizing, offering support, promising to make things right. Kioma, Okonkwo's daughter, hugged her tightly. Thank you, she whispered, for being brave enough to tell the truth. Thank you for believing it, Elara whispered back. By the time they returned to the carriage, Elara was exhausted, emotionally drained, ready to sleep for a week. Kael held her as they rode back to the palace. You were magnificent. I was terrified. That's what made it magnificent. You did it anyway. He kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. Those words broke something in her. She cried against his chest. Not sad tears, not happy tears, just release. 2 years of running. 2 weeks of caring for a dying man. Weeks of planning revenge. All of it poured out, and Kael held her through it all, whispering in Korean. Words she didn't understand but felt in her bones. When they returned to the palace, everything should have felt finished. Complete. But it didn't, because revenge had been Kael's purpose, his obsession, his reason for everything, and now it was done. What happens now? Elara asked as they stood in his chambers. Kael pulled her close. Now we figure out who we are without revenge between us. If there's nothing left, there's everything left. He cupped her face. You asked me once if obsession was enough. I told you it was all I had, but I was wrong. Between dying and surviving, between revenge and forgiveness, I fell in love with you. He said it simply, like admitting the sky was blue. Not the transaction, not the witness, not the weapon. You, Elara, the woman who sang to me in Yoruba and held my hand and made me want to live. Breath caught. You don't mean that. Never meant anything more. He leaned his forehead against hers. I know I trapped you here. I know I gave you no choice. I know I used you for revenge. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you, not as your captor. As your husband, real this time. What if I can't forgive you? Then I'll keep trying until you can, or until my dying day, whichever comes first. He smiled slightly. And as we have established, I'm very hard to kill. Elara laughed through her tears. This beautiful, broken, impossible man, who'd survived poison and death, who'd dragged her back to the palace, who taught her to fight and loved her through revenge and made her feel seen in ways she'd never imagined. I fell in love with you when you were dying, she admitted. I didn't want to, didn't mean to, but I did. And then you came back and you were someone different and I fell in love with you all over again. Both versions, the dying prince and the Phoenix King. That a yes. It's a maybe. Ask me again in a year when we've had time to be people instead of revenge and survival. A year, he agreed. And then we'll see. She pulled him down for a kiss. But for now, yes, real husband, real wife, real marriage, let's try it. Kiss deepened, became something more, became a promise. They had a year to heal. To grow, to become more than their trauma. And after everything they'd survived, 1 year seemed easy. 1 year later, Kael proposed again. Not because he had to. Because he wanted to, on one knee in the palace gardens, holding a ring made of platinum and hibiscus flowers pressed in crystal. Elara Valerius, he said. Will you marry me again, properly this time, with celebration and witnesses and a future that's ours to choose? She looked at the man who'd been her dying prince and her Phoenix King. Who taught her to fight, who'd loved her through revenge, who'd spent a year learning to be gentle and patient and kind. Yes, she said, but on one condition. Anything. More secrets, no more revenge, no more letting the past control us, just us building something new. Can do that. He slipped the ring onto her finger. As long as you promise to call me out when I'm being an obsessive tyrant. Deal. Second wedding was everything the first wasn't. Celebration, music, dancing. Both their cultures woven together in beautiful chaos. Nigerian drums and Korean instruments. Yoruba prayers and Korean blessings. Her family, the ones who'd believed her and his allies. When they stood before the priest this time, Elara wore braids woven with gold. Kael wore traditional robes embroidered with phoenix and hibiscus flowers. And when they signed the register, they both used their real names. Their true selves, no more transactions, no more survival, just two people choosing each other. After the ceremony, Kael pulled her close as they watched the celebration. Have something for you, he said, already given me everything. This. He handed her a leather journal. It's poetry that I wrote while I was recovering, about a woman with braids like midnight and a voice that made me want to live. I thought you might want to read it. Elara opened the first page. The handwriting was shaky, written when he was still weak, but the words were beautiful. Kael, this is a reminder, he said softly. That even in the darkest moments you were my light, and you always will be. She kissed him as fireworks exploded overhead. Nigerian and Korean, tradition and innovation. Past and future together. 5 years later, Elara stood in that same palace garden watching her daughter play. The girl had her mother's braids and her father's eyes. Her name was Amara Jinwoo, meaning grace and immortality. She has your stubbornness, Kael said, joining her. And your intensity. The poor thing never stood a chance. He laughed and pulled her close. Any regrets? She thought about the girl who'd been running for her life. The woman who'd married a dying prince. The survivor who'd faced down her father. The queen she'd become. A single one, she said. You, only that I didn't find you sooner. You found me exactly when you were supposed to, when we both needed saving. I thought I was the one who saved you. No, she kissed him softly. We saved each other. And in the garden where everything had changed, where death had become life and revenge had become love, a Nigerian woman and a Korean king watched their daughter chase butterflies and dreamed about the future they'd built from ashes. The phoenix had risen. But more importantly, so had they. Together. The end. Did this dark romance leave you breathless? Drop a fire emoji fire in the comments if you loved Kael and Elara's journey from death to revenge to love. Crown comment below. What was your favorite moment? The death scene? The confrontation? Thekis on the training grounds? Let me know, ring if you want more dark romance stories like this. Obsessive heroes, strong heroines, enemies tollovers, revenge plots. Smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I've got an entire library of stories waiting for you. Broken heart, share this with someone who loves dark romance. Let's grow this community of romance lovestogther. And if you're wondering what happened to Duke Adnigi, that's a story for another time. Smirking face, see you in the next story. Until then, stay obsessed, stay dramatic, and remember, the best love story start with a little danger. Red, thanks for watching. Now go rewatch part 1 if you haven't already. End of part 2.